Welcome to ETMA Tech Talk. Here is your host, ETMA's Managing Director, Joe Basili.
If you've watched your finance team drown in invoice, vendor reconciliation, or card program chaos, this episode is for you. Kevin Reilly is the director of Corpay's Strategic Partners Group. Corpay is a global S&P 500 corporate payments company that helps more than 800,000 businesses simplify how they pay, manage expenses, and gain visibility into spend. Kevin leads initiatives to help third-party payment providers and aggregators monetize and streamline their payments and maximize revenue generation. He has worked with a diverse group of customers over his roughly 13 years in the payment technology space, including TEMS, UEMs, AP automation platforms, and regional banks. Corpay is redefining how companies issue cards, send payments, embed controls, and convert spend into actionable data. We will discuss how automation, virtual cards, and real-time automation visibility are reshaping the finance function, the big levers companies miss controlling expenses and payments, and one or two mistakes that even finance companies make when they try to get fancy cards without guardrails. If you lead finance, operations, treasury, or you're interested in the behind-the-scenes machinery, you'll love this episode, and you'll leave armed with sharper understanding of what payment automation really looks like behind the buzzwords, as well as questions you should ask your payment vendor and your team and ideas to apply to your business. Please join me in welcoming Kevin Reilly from Corpay.
Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me.
So let's get right into it. I talked a little bit about it in the intro, but let's talk a little bit about what does Corpay do?
At Corpay, we are a global B2B payment company, and we help our customers streamline every aspect of their business spend. So corporate payments, Corpay. So we help them make their payments modern, fast, safe, and cost-effective. We're about a $3.8 billion company, moving roughly $450 billion to 120 different countries and 145 different currencies. We've got a really big global reach. Payments are all that we do, and I feel like we do it better than anyone.
What makes you say that you do it better than anyone? What are some of your differentiators?
When I look at our competition, or let's say I'm walking into a competitive deal and we've got a potential customer looking at the options that are out there in the marketplace, normally comes in two flavors, right? So on one side, we're going to have all of the big global banks. And so, banks are great because they've got the embedded treasury relationship, probably have some sort of a financing relationship with the customer already. They've got the card products, they can move the money, but they can be slow when it comes to technology development. And it's really not their core competency. On the other side of that, you've got the really sharp new fintechs. There's more coming to market each and every day. They're really good at what they do. They're fast, they're nimble, the UIs are great, the APIs are super slick, but they don't have what the banks have, which is the card issuing, the money movement, the power behind the scenes. And so if you look at both sides of those flavors, like big bank power, fintech agility, Corpay is right in the middle. And that's what makes us different. We feel like we excel on both sides of that. And when a customer partners with Corpay, it's a bank agnostic solution that does all the big bank things with all of the fintech agility and expertise.
So it's all these different systems and not having a homogeneous or single point.
Visibility and control. I think when I start to talk with a customer, the biggest thing isn't the individual products they have deployed to execute, it's the number of products they have deployed. This usually happens as companies grow over time. We're in that stage of the marketplace, not just in payments, but in banking. Tech consolidation is a big deal, and deploying on cloud platforms is a big deal. When we look at payments across the entire organization, there's a lot of moving parts to it, especially with larger enterprise customers. Maybe they've grown through acquisition, maybe they're multinational. They've got a lot of things going there. Different ERP systems, different finance orgs. So there's a lot of complexity. And so when we sit down with a customer that says, hey, Kevin, with Corpay, we need to modernize our payment organization, where do we start? And so when we go into those situations, we normally find, just by the nature of growth, that over time, let's say they've got an ERP, let's say it's Dynamics or it's NetSuite or any one of the numbers that are out there. Well, over time, there's been separate pieces that have been bolted on in different silos over time. And so you may have a card expense solution through a certain vendor, but it's tied to 3 different card vendors. You could have MasterCard or Visa or Amex, right? You could have a local bank in there. Some are on points, some are on rebates. So there's complexity there just in that one particular product or silo. You could have a self-built invoice ingestion. You could be doing it manually. And so I think the biggest disruptor isn't necessarily the products, because on their own, they could do a really good job. They could be great products. They probably are great products. But for the organization, having so many disparate systems it's a nightmare for the staff. It's a nightmare for scaling, making things cost effective. And so that's really the biggest disruptor that we found.
So let's talk a little bit about business value and culture within organizations. One of the common narratives that you hear in finance is this idea that automation plus controls equals efficiency. But often the sticking point is really culture or adoption. Like you said, you've got all these different processes and different payment platforms that have crept into the system within large corporations. From your vantage point, what are the most underrated behavioral obstacles to payment automation success?
2 years ago when I was at Comdata, now Corpay, I came back about 1.5 years ago. One of the things that drove me back was this holistic approach and the movement. They evolved the strategy to build Corpay as a horizontal orchestration layer for payment technology development. If you think about a legacy system, let's say you got an ERP and over time you've bolted on a solution here for card, one for invoice and one for payments. Everything was bolted directly into the ERP. If you think of Corpay, we're a platform that sits horizontally on top of the ERP. And now we're orchestrating finance and payment experiences off the development platform, which is Corpay. And this gives the customer a ton of value, because not only is it fixing the problem that's urgent, we can fix thing 1 right now and develop over time off the same layer, but it also future proofs the technology, because the technology is moving at warp speed and changing every single day. And who knows what we'll be talking about 24, 36 months from now. Having an orchestration layer in a company you trust to grow with over time is super important. You can't do that with point solutions. You have to have an orchestration layer with a company you can trust. That really drew me back to Corpay.
So let's get into that. You said that the whole payment structure within organizations and the technology and the approach is changing rapidly. What sort of things do you see changing?
Well, on the product side, it's got everyone's head spinning. I just attended Money 2020 in Las Vegas, and that conference, I'm not sure if you've ever been there before, but it's huge. There's like 20,000 people there. It's at the Venetian, and it is wild. It is essentially the Super Bowl for global payments and fintech. What I love most outside of networking is the chance to learn. You've got the embedded partners that have been doing it a while, like Corpay, and then all of the new fresh fintechs and the new sharp minds and ideas that are coming to market with tokenized rails and RPTs, real-time payments, FedNow, wallets, multi-currency. It's just, it can make your head spin with how much is coming out on the product side. Having a payment partner that focuses 100% on payment at the corporate level is so important, because the product's going to change. You have to outsource the trust part to a really good partner to be able to keep up. Because if you're chasing product, you're going to be behind in 6 months.
But let's push technology a little bit further. AI is such a huge buzzword. How are you applying artificial intelligence in your business, and how do you see it helping or maybe hurting, the space?
This is a really good question. So much of that conference was about being blown away by demos of new technology and being shown what AI is going to do in real time. But there's a people side to this, Joe. There really is. And I think the winners are going to be a really good combination between advanced top of line product that still has a human connection to it. Maybe I'll elaborate a little more here. So I've seen so often, especially when you look at the new fintechs that come to market, great UIs, automation technology, customizable workflows, But again, there's this people side to executing these payments with precision. And for now, there's really no way around it. I think that's the big overlook. If the sole ingredient of a provider strategy is best in class technology, it's going to look great, demo great, man, it turns some heads. Everyone's going to love seeing it until you start measuring the results and success of the program without people behind the scenes managing that vendor onboarding experience, ensuring maximum card adoption, facilitating the payments to IVRs and typing them into websites, following up on payments, the exceptions. All of that's still going to live on the customer side of the fence. They're going to end up with a slick technology that looks great. The staff is still going to be burdened with that manual execution, and you're still going to have a mess. At Corpay, we invest a lot in our people behind the scenes. That's really why we've done so well with partners. We've got great technology. I'll put it up against anyone. But when it comes to actually servicing the payments behind the scene and maximizing card adoption and service and following up on the messy side of payments, check aging, check cancellations, all that laborious stuff that's happening behind the scenes, none of that's going away. But with Corpay, we make the investment in the people to take that off our customers' hands. So that's the big overlook, is we're going too fast to product. And if you leave behind the people, you may regret it in payments.
Where do you see opportunities for your business going forward?
I'm really excited about how we're evolving in our partner space. We're bringing together our cross-border solutions with our domestic and Canadian business in North America. Money movement in the US is different than it is in the rest of the world for a number of reasons. Years ago, Corpay bought a company called Cambridge Cross-Border Payments, and they were the best of what they did, moving money internationally. That's why we picked them up. And so we have really good capabilities on, cross-border and North America, but I think we could have done a better job bringing those together. I'm on the team internally at Corpay that's working on doing that. It's not necessarily a product execution thing. It's just a focus thing. We've got this great cross-border business and this amazing domestic business. They're both doing really well. And we do work together, but really building an organization that brings that together. It's going to benefit a lot of developing platforms on the fintech side, but then also it's going to help with gaps, let's say in the TEM space. As you know, Joe, I was part of the early entry to card payments in the telecom expense space, and this is going back over a decade. It's been a tremendous success for so many members of ETMA over the years, which is great. I was just at the ETMA conference and talked to many, and coming out of those conversations, there's some gaps, in bill pay in some ways that we can make that better. And I'm part of the team that's working to drive that. So higher adoption, taking less of the manual work off of the bill pay, automation engines behind the scenes, executing for cross-border payments. I'm excited to work on that project. And my goal is at this time next year to really have that fleshed out and have a fresh new take on a solution geared directly for TEMS and bill pay or expense management that fills in some of those gaps and takes that next leap in terms of performance for bill pay.
Some examples of things where things didn't go according to plan.
Yeah, so I'm always a big fan of pushing great ideas. Everything that as people we've achieved all started with an idea, right? From the glasses to the iPhone. But one thing all this stuff has in common, it was an idea, right? There's always going to be mistakes and deviation from the plan. I think it's a requirement for success. My mind just goes back to when I was in the digital banking space. I was working for a firm out of Amsterdam. They're called Backbase, awesome technology company. I remember in the banking space at the time, all of these new neo fintech banks were coming up, right? So there was Chime, Ally, Revolut, and they were fully operational banks without brick and mortar. And they were doing tremendous with account acquisition. They were really blowing up. There was this scare in the industry, incumbent brick and mortar banks. Maybe they've got an app, maybe they've got online banking, but oh my God, what do we do now? We got to go digital. And so there was this huge push to digitize absolutely everything, every single journey inside the bank. We had to make sure that it was done on an app with facial recognition technology and all that stuff, because we thought that the market was demanding that. It was actually demanding something in the middle, if that makes sense, right? Where we find it now is the online banks are great, and you can have that experience where you open up an account from your phone and that can be your bank. But there's still so much to be said for trust when it comes to money. People, again, humans and trust and money, they're very closely aligned. I think that was a time in the digital banking space where we had to take a pause and say that the customer preference is actually in the middle. The customer loves the tools. You got to have a good app. But when it comes time for the boat loan, or maybe opening up a 529 for the new baby or the new mortgage, whatever, there's a strong preference to go sit down, look at a human, right? And I also think different bank brands, they have their own tone, their own feel, their own history with their communities. There's a lot to be said for the work that banks have done and credit unions over the years. The answer was replicating those journeys and digital experiences to match the tone and tenor of the bank brand itself, because there was this perfect combination when you get it right between technology and an environment where the customer feels safe. And they want to take that next step with you before turning everything over to their phone. AI. Can't go anywhere without AI. We just moved into a new house a few months ago, and the washer and dryer showed up. My wife ordered it. It's got an AI wash setting. I don't know what that means. That brings me to my next point. We hear AI so much, and there's so many different contexts behind it, and absolutely everything that we touch and feel, it can be completely overwhelming. And so, yes, we are using AI anywhere that it makes sense from a product facing standpoint to sharpen the technology and the experience. Anytime we can make things faster, easier, more automated for our customers, we're certainly going to do that. The competition requires us to be always advancing, always looking forward. AI has helped us do that tremendously on the product side, but I think it's more than just product facing. I've been kind of blown away of how AI is changing things internally. I work for an almost $4 billion global payments company. We're a big company with a lot of different moving parts and tools internally and processes. We haven't done a really good job. We've done a great job of incorporating AI tools to how we work internally. And so, for instance, it was just yesterday, I was getting ready for a call for a prospective customer, and we've been working with them going back to June, right? So it's been several meetings. We've done tech, we've done revenue projections, we've done business cases, and they got a new CEO a few weeks ago. All right. So it's our first chance to meet with her. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, how do I get her up to speed on everything we've done so we're not starting over? So normally that process would be, okay, pull up the calendar. When did we have a meeting? Who was in there? What did we talk about? What did we leave with? And normally that would take hours to pen out and then put into the thing. Well, with Copilot AI, I literally just typed in and I asked it, give me a summary of all the meetings we've had for X prospect, who was in the meeting and what we talked about. And so just the way that everything is becoming so much easier, faster, sharper. Guess it can be a little scary if you let it, or you can kind of let it excite you and get your wheels start turning. Okay, how do I make this better for my customers? And I think if we keep that mindset, sky's the limit.
How about from the security aspect of concern about customers and having funds hacked or stolen?
Yeah, security is a big deal. And it's, when I look at fraudulent transactions, especially on the ACH side of the house, right? Checks are still vulnerable. We know that. Virtual card, it's the safest payment method available anywhere in the world. But ACH transactions have actually been impacted by AI on the other side, right? So the fraudsters are using AI to redirect funds into fraudulent bank accounts. They're using AI bots and deep fakes and all kinds of crazy stuff. I could show you some stuff that would blow your mind for how these agents are trying to replicate bank information. At Corpay, we take fraud protection very seriously. We have to. Payments are all that we do. We move a lot of money. We're using AI at a high level to combat that as well. There's a lot of technology that goes into it, looking for patterns and predictive models. I wouldn't claim to be an expert, but that's one of the ways that we're using AI to fight back against the AI agents trying to steal the money. It's a bit of the Wild West out there right now. It's changing every day.
You just said that the cards are more secure versus ACH and other forms of other payment methods. Can you elaborate a little bit on why?
So when I say card, let me double down and say virtual card. What is a virtual card? A virtual card is a one-time use virtual Corpay card. In this case, it's got a unique 16-digit number associated for that card and an amount that's specific and predetermined. Once that card is used and accepted by the merchant, that card number goes away forever. So it is a one-time use virtual MasterCard. And the rates of fraud in those are just so astronomically low, they almost don't even register. And so they're an incredibly safe payment backed by MasterCard as well. So when we start talking about AP programs, we help customers. Let's say they've been doing it the same way they've been doing it for decades, and they've got 90% of their AP bills going out by check. We want to come in and say, okay, how much of these checks can we move to virtual card, the safest payment? And then from there, we want to get those on an ACH rail and then finally fall back to a secured check with bidirectional positive pay.
What's your perspective on the current state of the industry?
The state of the card industry is definitely evolving. I think that anytime you have such advancement in how fast money can be moved, there's actually a lot of pressure on, clearinghouse, especially when we're talking about international money movement. And then we've got wallets and stable coins. So I think the card industry is strong. It continues to get stronger, but I think we're going to have to be smart and stay on the pulse of how things are developing. As a Corpay card is a huge part of our business. We're MasterCard's number one issuer in North America. Cards are a big part of what we do, but it's not the only thing that we do. And as technology is developing, we're at the forefront of that as well. I think there's a huge upside in leading in wherever the development of real-time payments are going and how the rails for FedNow are developing here in the US. Moving money internationally, I think it is so cool what's happening with some of these different companies that I follow personally, and I try to learn from each and every day. But yeah, there's digital wallet stuff. There's new companies that are coming in and just really kind of taking things to the next level. It feels like there's so many big ideas out there that they all sound cool at once, but seeing which ones are actually going to take over and lead and grab market share is going to be interesting. But there's a world of opportunity out there. I think right now, best idea wins. And yeah, I think we're going to have 10 years of product development and innovation in the next 24 months. It'll make your head spin. So I get up each day, try to get up early, try to get logged in and make sure I'm not getting left behind.
Tell us something memorable about Corpay.
I was hired at Comdata, which is, now Corpay. This would have been in February of 2012. And so at that time, this is really on the front end of how virtual cards were starting to move themselves into corporate payments, right? And then, shortly thereafter, we moved it into TEMS and stuff like this. But this would be just regular companies using virtual cards to replace checks inside their AP organization. And so Comdata wanted to start selling virtual card product into banks. Okay. And so I happened to be in the banking world. I worked for a marketing company that did sales training in banks. So I had a pretty big network of regional banks that I'd been working with for years. And so I was hired at Comdata. They say, people in banks. So here's our virtual card solution. Go sell it to banks. I'm like, okay, I don't know what a card is or virtual card, but we're going to learn. We're going to go figure it out. So I get hired for the job, which was super cool. But I remember the first day I go down to the training room. Well, Joe, Comdata grew up in the fleet and trucking space. So Comdata developed this proprietary card for over-the-road truckers, right? It's a killer product. It evolved into MasterCard and virtual card, and look where we're at today. But at the time, they hadn't updated the training at all. So Joe, I spent 2 weeks down in the training department. There's like trucker hats on the walls and posters of gas stations. They're training me on fuel discounts at a pump. The last day they took the training group and we had lunch at a TA truck stop in Nashville and got to look in the engines of the truck. That was definitely a memorable spot of working with Comdata. But no, to see all the changes over the years has been so cool. And then when I came back, the biggest thing that stood out for me is I left for 9 years, but when I came back, there were still so many people that were there when I was there at that time. And so, there's been so many great people that have grown with the company. I feel like that culture is there. It felt right at home coming back.
If I gave you a billboard in Times Square for Corpay, what would you put on that billboard?
See, now you put me in the marketing department.
So let's get to know you a little bit. Are there any early life experiences or people that set you on a path where you're doing things today that resemble what you did growing up?
People that put me on a path, I guess I'd have to think about my mom. She set the example for me for hard work, service to others, and finding the good in any situation. I try to apply those three things to business. If we're going to be in business, we don't want to lose the heart of service, because if we lose that focus, we're not going to be around very long. We've got to be serving our customers. And then finding the good in any situation, business and payments and technology. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. Things are going to be wrong. There's going to be tough days. And how do we stay positive through that? Hard work. She was a single mom. I was the youngest of 5. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, but I watched her put herself through nursing school while cleaning hotel rooms. She missed a lot of games because she was out there working, but I won't forget those 3 lessons from her. Hard work, service to others, and staying positive even when times are tough.
What do you know now that you wish you would have known coming into the industry?
I think when I came into the industry, I had this feeling that when I walked into the room, everyone in the room knew more than me, and they had all the right words to say and the buzzwords, and I was never going to be able to catch up with them. I found myself a little intimidated at times, but over time, as I've grown in my career, I found out that in a large part, we're all out here trying to figure it out. We've all got some of the same struggles, and we're dealing with some of the same things. Anyone that tells you they know it all, they don't, right? And if they do, tomorrow they're not, because things change. And so I would just tell my younger self, don't be intimidated. Make sure your heart's in the right place. You're there to serve customers. You're willing to work hard, drop your ego and learn. Then you're always going to have a place at the table. Everyone's trying to figure it out.
What would your younger self think listening to this episode to see where you're at now? What would surprise them most about your career path and where you're at now?
My younger self, I think they'd be surprised that I even ended up in business or in payments in general. Like I said, we didn't have a lot growing up. We had enough, and we certainly had love. When I would see businessmen on TV or go to school with a guy and his dad owned a business, it just seemed so foreign and so far off. Now that I'm working with some of the world's biggest companies and moving payments internationally, it would be a trip for that younger person. So I feel very blessed and very honored where my career is kind of taking me.
What are you passionate about outside of work, hobbies, or other things?
Daily guided meditations on YouTube. I don't know if you're into that. I was turned on to them. I took a 4-day Tony Robbins Unleash the Power of Within course. I know, roll your eyes. I did too. But he put on some sort of Jedi mind trick on me through that course. Part of the challenge was to continuously do that stuff. And I found that it's helped so much to calm the mind and noise. I feel like there's a little more peace and centeredness, and it helps me in life. I enjoy my days a little better, but career-wise and professionally, I found I feel like I'm more productive. I feel like my personal energy is better. I feel like I'm connecting with people on a more sincere level, and things come naturally instead of pushing it as hard. Daily guided meditations on YouTube. You can search for whatever you want. Highly recommend.
Any other books, ideas, or quotes that changed how you lead or what you do?
Latest book, I haven't started this awesome book that I got at the ETMA conference yet, but I can't wait to start that one. Latest book that I listened to, it was an audio book by Jay Shetty, staying with the spiritual nerdy theme. It's called Think Like a Monk, and it was really cool. A lot of those same kind of meditation themes. I love technology. I work in technology, but I love to get away from it as well. So anything mountains for me, specifically Rocky Mountains out west. I live in Nashville. I grew up in Florida, so I've been in the South my entire life. Each summer I make time to take the family out to Colorado. We've fallen in love with Colorado. My twin boys are 11, so about 7 or 8 years from now, Renee and I we're hoping to get to the mountains. But yeah, absolutely love it up there. Anytime I can spend in the mountains or outdoors, I do. I started getting recently into solo overnight camping trips. Yeah, so it's really neat. I'll go out in the woods with hammocks set up, kick a little fire up, throw the hammock up, and completely disconnect from Wi-Fi, grab a book with a headlamp. It's a little weird at first, because of like reaching for the phone, but it's not going to work. But feeling so refreshed in the morning, just from the peace and the quiet, highly recommend. It's nice.
Just as we wrap things up, is there anything we missed or an important lesson you want the audience to take away from this podcast?
I would just say we're in this, and it's not just in payments and in business. It just could be the world in general, maybe it's AI, maybe it's just the changing times. But I sense when I talk to friends and family, there's a lot of uncertainty and fear and anxiety, and rightfully so. Is it going to take all of our jobs? But I also think if we choose to look for it, there's going to be some positive things that come out of it. If we can focus on opportunity over these next 4 to 5 years and what's actually popping up in terms of new opportunities, I think there's a huge upside if we're looking for it. That's sort of the way that I'm positioning myself to go at it. I definitely don't want to live scared. I know that there's going to be a ton of change. And when there's times of change, there's always tons of opportunity. It can be tough, but tough times make tough people, and tough people can help people.
How can people find out more about your firm and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so if it's Corpay, just go to the website. That one's easy, corpay.com. It's got everything you need there. But if you'd like to talk to me about all things Corpay and payments, or just want to riff on, state of the industry, I'm on LinkedIn. So that's where I spend my time. My page, you're not going to see a lot of like white papers reposted. You can get that from the Corpay website. I try to present myself as a regular person. I like to have regular conversations and understand what's going on in someone's business. And if we can help, that's great. If not, we can part as friends. LinkedIn's you can find me, and you can always reach out or DM or interact with a post and all that good stuff.
Well, this is great. Really educational. We covered a lot of ground. I hope people will join us for the next podcast. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks so much, Joe. Have a good one.
ETMA Tech Talk podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes research, collective wisdom, and action. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions from the market's top problem solvers, making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode.